Here we go. Welcome to week 14 of the No Putts Given podcast. Why? What's wrong with that?
14.
Episode 14.
Oh. 14-0.
14-0.
You know, it's harder than it looks, isn't it?
It is. It is. Welcome to episode 14, No Putts Given podcast. Here we got a lot of good stuff on the show today. Let's see. New driver testing program. Might heard something about that. Good shot of the truth. We're going to shoot some truth. Coolest ping invention. Most wanted utility iron coming at you. And Titleist contest. So full slate of good stuff.
Also, Chris Nicholas here.
Chris Nicholas here. That's me. I am sponsored by McConnell's Ice Cream, courtesy of them arriving on the show today. And normally say, let's get it. So let's go get it.
All right. So we're going to start off with the new driver testing program on the PGA Tour. For anybody out there that hasn't heard, obviously they probably heard about the Xander Schauffele incident. And if not, there was a big stir caused by some non-conforming drivers possibly being on tour in the testing program that had been in place up to that point, and now that has changed. So obviously that was kind of a black eye on, the industry as kind of a whole to some degree. So looks like they've come out with a fix of some sort, and how that looks is going to be. Couple of differences are this. So instead of testing from a drawer, basically, on the PGA Tour vans, they're going to be directly pulling it from the players' bags. And I can see Tony is ready to go off on that.
It's just going to be so easy to get around that issue anyway for the manufacturers. They'll put in a driver that they know is going to pass, and then come Wednesday evening when they'll go out and practice a little bit more, they're going to put the real one back in.
What do you think, Tony? Do you think it's a fail? Like how accurate is this going to be of a representation of what's real in players' bags? And
I don't know. It seems way too overly complicated, and I think you have to kind of, I guess, the nobility in it, right? If you want to look at it that way, is that the tour is trying to prevent conforming drivers from getting into play. They're not necessarily trying to catch and punish anybody. They just want to stop it from happening. So they've got this, all right, we're gonna randomly test, sort of like the NFL supposedly drug tests, and then if you we've got this green, yellow, red system. If it's green, you're great. If it's yellow, hey, you can use it, but know that you're getting close. And then if it's red, this is the one I really enjoy. If it's red, it's deemed non-conforming or damaged. You can't use it, so we're going to give it to the manufacturer's representative that's in the trailer with you, so you don't even get it back. Now, of course, those guys could just walk out of the trailer and the manufacturer's rep could hand it right back to the player. And as far as they've stated, right, there's no sort of nothing that's been announced that's also like, and also, after the tournament, we're going to check and make sure that the driver we tested is actually the one that you used. Or,
great point. So
switching or anything like that. So it's like, what the hell? What's actually the point?
If you've got a non-conforming driver, should that thing not just be pulled? The USGA should take that driver permanently, correct?
Well,
it's mine now.
I don't know. I think the bigger issue for me is, great, you're testing what is being used or what a guy hands you prior to competition, but where is your documented procedures, right? Where's the announcement? Where's the documented procedures for how you're actually going to police this, right? Because we're sort of like I guess the thinking is, hey, right, golf is a game of integrity and nobody would intentionally cheat or nobody would intentionally use non-conforming equipment. Of course, we got to this point where we're ramping up the testing, and this isn't Xander Schauffele, let's be clear about this, but certainly there was some grumblings in years past about manufacturers intentionally offering and slipping players non-conforming drivers to be used in tournaments. So if the problem starts with, hey, guys are using non-conforming drivers in a competition, I don't know how you arrive necessarily at a full and complete solution by saying, hey, we're going to test drivers prior to the competition, and then after the competition, if we're doing anything at all, we're not letting anybody know about it because, my God, we want to keep everything as secretive as we possibly can in terms of who maybe had a non-conforming driver, how close they were to the CT limit, right? We're not reporting player names. We're not reporting the numbers, the CT numbers. Everything is completely hush-hush. And again, we don't know what testing actually could take place or will take place after an actual tournament to ensure that non-conforming drivers weren't used in said tournament. So,
all right, Tony,
hold on. The PGA Tour and USGA, please, I'll give you Tony's cell phone number after the episode. Call Tony.
Oh
he has the solution for the problem.
Tell me how you really feel, Tony. Like 10 minutes later.
Well, we didn't even get to human error factors, tolerances. Are the machines going to be the same? All of that stuff that you and I had talked about. I was like,
hold on.
How are we going to even start to account for variabilities in a process that's run by humans? And how much wiggle room do we have in there? That was part of the Schauffele story, right? Was you had different calibrations or you had different measurements and it failed one, passed another. So if it's going to be such a fine line, how do you even start to address that? And we, like I said, we didn't even get there in that part of it.
The yellow light, that's that yellow.
The traffic light in England.
Okay, hold on. Back up. Is this better than what it was before?
No, it's just different and more complicated and sort of makes it look like, hey, we know there's a problem. We're addressing it by running around in a freaking circle.
Perceptually, it's better than. Perceptually, I think people look and say, "Oh, they're testing
I guess
it."
If you don't read through it, you're like, "Yes, very good, excellent, well done, gents."
Well, I think people just want to know that they identified it and they're trying to fix it. That's, I think, what people want to see.
Well, yeah. So they're trying to prevent something, but there doesn't seem to be any sort of process in place to verify that these drivers or any driver, right? I mean, because if you're not randomly selected, you could conceivably have a non-conforming driver in play. You could use that driver, again, conceivably to win a tournament. And since we're not doing any sort of post-tournament checks to verify that the winner's drivers or the top 5 or 10 or however deep you want to go were actually all conforming. And again, this is all before we start talking about other equipment stuff that could be non-conforming, right? Wedge grooves, golf balls, I mean, any number of things. No joke. Mm-hmm. It's sort of just like, hey, yeah, we're gonna handpick a few drivers, and if you're, I think the way they're written, I believe the way it's written, if you're above the number, right, that 239 number, if you're above that but under our tolerance number 257, that's where you get the yellow. And the reality is, I think probably every driver they test is going to be get that yellow designation, because nobody wants to be at 239 and leave almost 20 CT points potentially on the table. So it's almost, what's the real point of yellow except maybe to internally document exactly what percentage of drivers are above 239, which on tour reasonably I would expect to be 100%.
Hey, and if you want an illegal driver out there, FYI, just anyone out there listening, worldshottestdriver.com can shave your face down and get you way more CT points than this.
I might get that.
You don't need it, man.
Yeah, if
I could drive par 5s.
It's the guy who hits at 330.
I can drive par 5s now,
You want to beat Jamie Sadlowski next year at the PGA show.
You know what? I might train for it. This is going to be a new battle.
You got the biceps for it.
That's actually a good follow-up. Can Harry's non-conforming driver beat Jamie Sadlowski's?
We should buy one and then go and
We
test
have
it.
one.
We do?
That jet speed that's sitting on the shelf.
All right, we're bringing that to the PGA.
Actually, we don't. I gave that to my mother-in-law because she wanted some more distance off the tee. I said, try this.
Because you wanted to get her in trouble with the USGA?
Yes. All right, so as you can see, Sam is in place of Harry Nodwell. We have Hurricane Dorian literally right outside right now, and we're doing umbrella testing. We're testing in hurricane conditions. So Harry's out there in the hurricane, checking to see if Shed Rain can beat Gustbuster this year. What do you think?
Well, I can't say anything.
I thought you were out there testing in the hurricane.
God, you're quick, man. How'd you do that?
No, but Harry's going to go out there and test in the hurricane. Anyway, next up is Shot of the Truth. And this week we are talking max performance versus max consistency. And this is something that doesn't have a whole lot of sexiness to it, but it's something that I think is happening in the golf industry, and not a lot of golfers hear about it because it's not a real marketable term right now. But anyway, we're adding a new component to our wedge test, and that will be released in a couple weeks, that will show some level of who is doing a more consistent job on pretty much every shot or more shots that you're going to encounter on the golf course, right?
Yep.
So that got us talking about max consistency, and what that means is, back when they changed the wedge groove rule, all the wedge companies came out and were talking about how they wanted to get everybody back to that number. But really what people should be paying more attention to across the board, not just wedges, drivers, everything, is consistency more than maximum performance. So I'll give you a couple examples. Ping and Mizuno seem to be doing a really good job, not at marketing this, but at including this in their golf club design in regards to consistency. So for example, with Ping, their new wedge grooves, wet, dry, perform fairly similarly. And in early testing, we're already seeing that a lot of wedges, huge drop off when there's a little bit of moisture involved in the shot. Let's take drivers, for example. I remember back to the TaylorMade Aero Burner. You remember that, Tony, where damn was that thing long, but man, you missed it by just a small amount. And everybody talks forgiveness or accuracy kind of left to right, right? I'm more interested, or just as interested, is the forgiveness front to back. So yes, it will go 285 yards, but if you miss hit it and it goes 240, that 40-yard circle is not what you're looking for. So when you hit a Ping driver, generally what you see is 280, but then when you miss hit it, 272.
Right.
That circle's a lot tighter, right? So consistency of ball speed, consistency of distance, consistency of spin numbers, consistency of launch angle, all those things aren't sexy in a launch monitor battle when you're there getting fit. But when you hit thousands of shots, they play out really importantly downrange and start becoming real performance, right? So let's talk about that. Chris, we discussed it obviously before the show started, but what are your thoughts on that, and what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's a paradigm shift. And so I think the bigger point is, how do we get consumers to start understanding that is really that important? It makes me go back and think at Tony's course, a couple of the par threes. They're really easy par threes as long as you hit the green. As long as you hit the green. And we've seen that now with Titleist's new T series, replacing the AP series. They're talking about distance, dispersion, descent angle as part of the fitting metrics, right? And then we've seen that also with Mizuno in their T20 series wedges, how they want the spin to be commensurate regardless of you're coming out of the rough. Is it wet? Is it dry? Is it a buried lie, etc.? And like you said, the hard part about it, that's not very sexy. It doesn't, you put that on a banner and people go, oh,
sexy
the most consistent irons in golf.
Well, think about it, right? When a guy goes to get fit for a driver or a set of irons, what one metric does he give a shit about?
Distance.
That's it. And not just like, how far did these two irons go? It's how far did one shot go, and whichever one won by one shot. Like,
right.
I'll never forget, I was at PXG and we were getting fit, and I was hitting a 7-iron, 217 yards, right? And guy walks by and says, hey, bend that 1 degree stronger. I don't need any more distance out of 217. I just want 217 every shot,
and over
right?
and over. Yeah.
And that is the difference, I think. Tony and I talk about it all the time. It's the people that are winning are the companies that are evolutionary, not revolutionary. Tech isn't going to be happening very often anymore. It's just not, because of the limits that are set, right? So then it becomes, all right, everybody's pushed this limit. Who can be at that limit every shot and consistently near that limit, right? Mm-hmm. And those are the companies that are winning, in my opinion. It's kind of like I always analogize the 50 meters, swimming event with what's his name, and I've said it before.
Michael Phelps.
He always wins by like a microsecond, right? But how is it that guy always wins by a microsecond?
Yeah, and to that point, it makes me think of a couple of good examples, like Ping with the LST, the 410. They didn't have that driver ready to come out at the same time as the rest of the series because frankly, it was really hard to beat the 400 LST. It was a fantastic driver.
They admitted that in the boardroom when we were talking about it.
And they were very open about it, right? Like, we legitimately couldn't make something better. And so when you finally saw that come out in, what was it, June, July, the biggest change was a couple additional fitting metrics to allow the club to be fit a little bit flatter. Mm-hmm. That's not revolutionary. It's evolutionary. And it's that little difference that might allow somebody to get that front-back dispersion or the left-right dispersion dialed in a little bit more, which is huge.
Sam was fitting me for that 410 LST one day, and he just cranked down the flat live fitting that was new on the driver, and immediately, boom. So it's making that driver whatever percentage better, right? 1% better.
Right.
To 5% better. It's the stuff that I love Ping for this, and this isn't a sponsored, no putts given, so I don't want to hear this from anybody, but I love Ping.
You will.
I love Ping, man, because they're not looking to market something fancy. They're doing things behind the scenes that are just no one would think of, and even if it makes them 1% better, the product, they're going to do that, and it's not even marketed. Some of these things are never even told to consumers.
Right, like you don't have the shirt like, hey, we have flatter lies.
No. Or we stick our stickers under our putter grips so you don't, you're not distracted when you look down them. So,
right.
Tony, what do you think? Like, which companies do you see that are doing a good job about evolutionarily designing product to be more consistent rather than maximizing just one shot?
Well, I think maybe we don't have the full picture necessarily of who's doing all of the little things, right? Because these little things aren't particularly sexy. So if you're one of the bigger companies, right? Callaway's probably the best example right now. Like, the little thing isn't even worth talking about because, flash face, right? Like, that's like, we've got this new revolutionary face design that's going to change everything moving forward forever, right? It's that kind of, that's kind of where the bigger companies are. And not that Ping is a small company, but if you took a look at market share and things like that, they're definitely not Callaway, but it is. So, and again, I think Ping, you're probably right, is a great example. It's just tiny little things that are easy to gloss over in a press release, for example. So, hey, we put the sticker on the underside of the putter shaft or moved it up the putter shaft so your eyes don't shift to that while you're standing over the ball, because we found that really weird thing while we were using, our special goggles in testing. Or, the one that I've been thinking about quite a bit lately is the hydro pearl finish that they're using on their irons and wedges, right? Increased hydrophobicity, meaning that it repels the water. The water doesn't bead, it runs off. And, you're sort of, okay, cool story, bro, right?
But that's not even something that consumers think about when they go to play. Like, if you poll 10 golfers, how many of them actually know that their ball performs differently when it's 8 o'clock in the morning and there's still dew on the ground versus 3 o'clock in the afternoon?
If I had to guess, it'd be 25%.
That's what I'm saying.
1 to 2.
I mean, after the ball test, we saw with the wet wedge test how much it changed. And now anytime I go out on a Saturday morning, I'm so cognizant. I make sure that my wedge face is dry, and I'm making sure that I'm trying to control variables.
Perfect example that leads me into what we're doing right now, which is wet versus dry wedge testing, right? We're not going to give the names out yet until we're done testing, but in early testing, there are wedges that, let's say wet versus dry, that perform very similarly to each other, and there are wedges that when you add even the slightest bit of water to the scenario, the performance dramatically changes and plummets, and that's from
it's some of those numbers are like, did the water fill in the grooves completely? Like, what happened here?
So and last time I checked, golf is played in a lot of different conditions,
right?
So this gets back to the story of maximizing consistency versus maximizing what looks cool, bro, and that's this thing go really far, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Sam is in the test facility every day seeing this and sees the products that are consistent standard deviation, which is a fancy word for nobody gives a shit except us probably, but those things really matter, and it's the small things that no one's going to know about or no one's going to really care about. But I think eventually there's going to be a shift that changes towards that, because that is what we are starting to see more on a yearly basis of the improvements we see from the companies providing new product for testing. They're not getting longer. they're getting more consistent, the good ones. And the ones that are winning our testing aren't the ones that are flash in the pan marketing stuff. It is quietly just deadly assassins on consistency. And after 10,000 shots, like I said, downrange, that's starting to show up as winning, you know?
Yeah, and I think
I think
a
a fantastic example, right? Because we've talked quite a bit about ping, but if you look at our driver test as kind of a different way to look at it, right? So Callaway Epic Flash Sub-Zero won that test, right? And if we go back and we look at the data, it's not because it was significantly longer than anything else, right? It, by the numbers, I think it was one of the longest, but certainly it wasn't like, holy shit, this thing just obliterated the field. It won because guys hit it consistently straight. Like, the correlation we found with strokes gained in that particular test was with fairway percentage, right? And again, the ripple there, we think of strokes gained as well, the farther you can get it down the fairway or up the golf course, then the better it is. And that's true when you're comparing Dustin Johnson to Zach Johnson, but at an individual level where my capacity to create different distance differences between drivers is maybe an average of 5 yards if I'm reasonably well fit for everything, maybe 5 yards, not even. It really comes down to which one I hit straight and consistently straight most often. And that's a tough sell. So what I find myself wondering is, in a lot of cases, would golfers be, I guess not would they? It's how much better served would a golfer be if he lost, what's the cutoff point? If I could lose X yards off the tee, but cut my standard deviations for key metrics in half, how much better off would that be on the scorecard?
Yeah, I mean, case in point.
Massive.
That's why I play cavity back irons and not blades, because they're more. I'm not going to hit the center of the club face all the time. I'm a +2 handicap, but I know that my ball speed consistency is higher.
Yeah. Well, no, I think, and to your point, Tony, I think one of the questions we have to answer then is, or at least think about, is take the Callaway, for example. People see that club won our driver test, and I would imagine correlate the flash face technology with some of those results. But as you said, that really wasn't the reason it won. It won because of the consistency that it offered, not necessarily what the first marketing pitch is from Callaway.
And you were talking about that earlier when readers come to mygolfspy and look at the driver test. You were like, they come down and go, well, this is the longest, and don't pay attention to that as much, because it really is. It's hard. We're in a difficult place right now where we collect all this data, and what we show you isn't the truth of why things win, but we know we have to show you all this data, but we have these protocols and kind of, testing algorithms, however you want to put it, on what we define as being a better club performing club for every golfer. And we have a theory on why that is, which doesn't directly correlate to, hey man, this is the longest club, right? There's all these other factors, and consistency, is one of them for sure. So just a reminder, last time I checked, all golfers miss hit, right? So all golfers need more consistent products, not just ones that perform when you dead nut one right on the screws, Yeah.
Well, dead nut one, and I guess from a fitting perspective, right? Like, and not always in dry conditions. And we can poke holes in some of what we do, and we can poke holes in fitting paradigms and things like that. But I mean, there are certain realities here. So I'd be curious if anybody listening to this in their fitting, whether it be for an iron or a wedge, for example, has ever, hit their series of shots and gone, all right, that was awesome. Now can we go, see how this performs when it gets a little bit of moisture on it, right? Because that's just typically not something we do. And yet, that's the kind of thing we're starting to see, right? The ping finish story's been around for a couple of years. Mizuno now with its new grooves to channel water. I would desperately hope, based on what we saw in the ball test, that somebody is working on a cover material for a golf ball that can maintain softness, maintain spin, and channel more water off of the ball, because all of these things are tremendously important when you get out on the golf course, especially in the morning, like Sam mentions. And it's never a consideration, and that may be because we sort of assume that, hey, everything is equal, but that's not the case.
Well, let's put some hard numbers on this real quick, right? So the average golfer out there, or golfers listening, can start to understand some of the ramifications of this. The two factors, Sam, spin and launch angle, right? Give me a percentage change dry versus wet that you've seen so far, from good to bad?
Yeah, so in fooling around with some testing protocols, testing a bunch of different wedges, both wet and dry. Personally, I saw in some wedges 5 and 6 degrees, I think it was.
Increased
launch angle, and then, gosh, I want to say it was in the 2000s, 2,000 or 3,000 for dry.
It was somewhere around
50%.
We'd have to go back and crunch it. It was 65 to 75% reduction in spin, I think, on the terrible end of that.
I mean,
all right, so think about that.
And that was in Sam's super limited. Hey, let's just try a few and see if this is worth doing a bigger test on. And
so wet
we certainly
ball
looked at that number and went, holy shit, yeah, we need to really look at this.
So dry ball, 60-yard shot, okay?
7,500.
Higher spin, lower launch, right? Ball gets wet. For not all wedges, but for some wedges, 65% reduction in spin and about a 25 to 30% increase in launch angle.
Well, think about it like this. If I'm hitting a wedge from 60 yards into a green and I'm getting 7.5, 8,000 RPMs of spin, and then we reduce that by 65%, we're coming in with driver spin.
Yeah, like 3,200.
Yeah. I mean, high driver spin. So 3 would spin.
Which means you're not going to hold the green.
It ain't going to go anywhere near the hole, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
So,
well, I just don't think the average person understands that. So that's what we're kind of talking about today in Shot of the Truth. I just hope, like Tony said, how many golfers out there have gone into a fitting and looked at anything other than distance? Start doing that. Start looking at, holding your fitter accountable to some other numbers, at least maybe one more. And Tony, if you had one thing to tell golfers out there that are going to get fit that would not just look at distance, what would the other most important factor be?
So the thing I say all the time, right, is you want to look for small numbers and small circles, and what that means is not you. Every launch monitor, or the ones that I'm aware of anyway, that a real fitter would use, will show you the standard deviation of key metrics. So not only how far is it going, but an idea of how consistently is it going far, which I think is more important, or delivery of the club, just whatever is important. Look at that standard deviation, and then again, every launch monitor will give you an elliptical downrange pattern that kind of shows your shot cluster, and the smaller that cluster gets, the more consistent, at least the expectation, right? Doesn't always translate, but hopefully, good fitter, it's going to translate to the course as a more consistent dispersion pattern.
And just give golfers an idea. So take drivers and irons. How many shots should a guy that's going to get fit for a driver, let's say doing a head-to-head, hit for each driver to get a good enough baseline?
Oh, everybody we've worked with has always told us 10 to 12 good shots. Now, that's a fitting scenario is a little bit different in that a good fitter is going to be able to throw something out pretty quickly. So most fitters will start with 4 or 5. But what I like to do when I fit guys is sort of toss what's not working and sort of just pare it down. And then when you get to a couple things that are in the ballpark, that's where you really start to spend some time and try and get a larger sample size. But the ripple there too is in a fitting scenario. If you're starting from a broad, wide space and you've got to narrow, you can get to the point where fatigue gets to be an issue pretty quickly.
No, I'm saying like once they've narrowed it down to a head-to-head scenario, 10 to 12 shots, correct?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's what I like to use. That's what the guys in Carlsbad and Phoenix and everywhere else we've talked to say that that's what they want to see from an R&D testing perspective. And again, like if that's the number that the industry relies on, I think it makes sense in a fitting scenario, with the caveat being like, yeah, as you get deeper into it, fatigue becomes an issue and it may not always be possible. But yeah, that's what I like.
Yeah, and sometimes fitters will go in. Like I've been to a driver fitting before, and I remember we were hitting a bunch of different shafts, and we narrowed down the head that I wanted, and then we started working through shafts. And if I hit one, remotely, if he was like, if you don't catch it dead nuts, I'm going to delete it. But at the end of the day, I want to see those numbers that aren't dead nuts, because I know that there's going to be a time I'm going to hit a driver that isn't.
That's what we always say. We want to, in our testing, right? We have an outlier detection system that is what its job is to do is to take away the golfer's ability and make it about the club, right? But you have to keep some of the mishits. Terrible mishits are your fault, right?
Right.
But you want to know which ones are not your fault that the club had influence on, right? So if you miss it at just a little bit, if he throws that, we know definitively that some clubs perform better on, a full face rather than just dead center shots, right? So you want to know that because golfers miss it.
Yeah, when golfers from our test group come in and say, hey, what 3-wood did I test best with? It's not, I don't just go to the stat-sig sheet and say, okay, this is your best one. I look at the launch metrics, I look at their ball speed, I look at their standard devs of ball speed, carry consistency, things like that matter because, let's be real. Like I said, you're not going to hit every golf club.
Do you charge for fittings?
Testers get complimentary information.
I think that's a good side business for you.
What?
Seriously, like the fittings that I see you guys doing there compared to the fittings I see in the real world.
Well, the reality is how many times have you gone to a fitting and the guy's like, all right, well, this is your best drive on this driver, so we're gonna look at those numbers.
Put it this way, I've never been to a good fitting.
Well, and again, it's all about where you go and the experience and the expertise. To a degree, the philosophy of the fitter, right? If you, the example I keep going back to is probably the best fitting experience I've ever had is when I did my TS driver fitting at Titleist with Glenn. Like his approach is very similar to what we end up with our outlier detection system. Like he's not dropping a lot of shots.
But you don't get those fitting opportunities at your local
60 yards right. Like it stays in the set because when you're on the golf course, you don't get to drop that shot, right? Like you Tony, have to see how a club performs when you miss it because the reality is you're going to miss it. A lot of us are going to miss it just as much as we hit it dead nut center. And if you want to talk about little misses, way more often. So this idea of from a fitting perspective, any fitter who says, I'm really only going to look at your really good shots, man, that's leave. Just leave.
Unfortunately, Tony, not all the readers out there, listeners out there have access to Glenn at TPI.
Yes, Tony forgets that sometimes. You know what I mean?
Well, no, but certainly Glenn is not the only good fitter.
Glenn by a first name that works at Titleist. Not many people have that ability. Like most people are going to Dick's or PGA Superstore.
That's where you go to. That's where the expertise of a cool clubs or a club champion.
Yeah. Let me put it to you like this, Tony. You remember who this guy was? We were at the PGA show, and this company, which was the biggest company in golf at the time for drivers, had their number one fitter at the PGA show, fitting people. Bingo. There you go. Enough said. And that's what I'm talking about. I've never been part of a good fitting.
In fairness, right? That's not a true fitting. Let's see if we can impress these guys with a big number.
Oh, but here's the difference. That's generally what you do reality. For PGA people coming to the show. But they knew we were a part of the media and they knew we worked for mygolfspy. So shouldn't you want to make sure you do the proper fitting?
Again, it's let's in that environment, right? It's let's try and impress. Let's try and impress the guy we're fitting and anybody who happens to be watching with a big number.
But that's every fitting. That's every fitting I've ever had.
That's a shame. That sucks because there are some really good fitters who approach it as, I can find you a club that you're going to hit the longest ball with, but that's not going to serve you well on a golf course.
Right. How can people get in touch with Glenn?
At Titleist.
Yeah, that is
not just Glenn.
Easier said than done, I think.
Well, I guess you call Josh. I don't know.
Call Josh at Titleist to get a hold of Glenn
Josh.
at Titleist.
Or Josh at New York Golf Center. Flying to New York City.
Yeah, you want to talk about a good fitter? I don't know how much fitting he's doing himself these days because he's running the place. But but that's the kind of guy you need to go to. I don't know how we qualify this or qualify fitters, but just a guy who gets it and understands. It's not just banging the ball as far as you can. It's
not all smash factor. Smash factor is not the only thing that matters.
Well, it's almost like consumers need you need a fitting.
Smoshed it.
You need a fitting questionnaire. You need to interview your fitter.
Wait a minute. Didn't we come out with something like that?
We did. I don't know. Maybe that would be helpful though, wouldn't it?
What, like a driver fitting guide to take with you to?
I'd want everything in the bag, not just a driver fitting guide. But it's a good start. It's a good start.
Well, when you get back from France, Chris, you can get to work on that.
Well, I will. I will check in with Glenn at Titleist when I get back from France with Sam.
Well, speaking of good fitters, we'll really quickly touch on the fact that I don't know who follows Tony Covey on Twitter, but if you don't, you should. It's entertaining.
I follow him.
He does not follow Sam, but Tony has journaled his career of not the best golf very publicly, and which is, hey, more power to him, man, because
More than I'm willing to do.
yes.
Hashtag Tooth Digest.
Yes. And he has finally decided to get some lessons from somebody that I think is going to be great for you. And if you can tell him who it is and where you're getting them from, and kind of the, people want to know about good fittings. This is one of the better places you can go, probably.
Well, yeah. No, so yesterday
If you live
I
in
went
bumfuck
for what
New
is,
York.
what's that? Yeah.
If you live in bumfuck New York.
If Glenn isn't available. No, so yeah, I did a swing evaluation yesterday. So kind of step one, and I would say probably of the guys in here in the studio with us today, Chris Nicholas seen me as my absolute best and my absolute worst. He was with me when I shot an even par 37 on the front, had at McGregor Links, had a turkey sandwich at the turn, and then shot what's that workout to a 12 over 47 on the back. And so that's kind of my game right there is schizophrenic, to say the least. And so I decided it was time to do something about it. And so I scheduled step one swing evaluation with Anders Matson, who was formerly at Saratoga National, which is kind of the fancy place around here. He's a Golf Channel Academy guy as well. He's got a new studio in Saratoga Springs that just opened up. So it was an opportunity to go and check out the studio and kind of have him take a look at my swing and begin the process of really overhauling things from the ground up. So really, I enjoyed it. Went out and tried to. It's amazing how difficult it is to implement things on the golf course immediately right afterwards. But step in the right direction. I'm going to work on kind of what he gave me day one for a week or so, and then get in and start a long, exhaustive series of lessons. I think that's the plan.
Man, smart guy, smart approach. We've known him for a few years and like his philosophies. And I wish Haney was around because there's a TV show on this.
There's the Haney Project.
I mean, this is definitely.
I don't know that the word project is enough to describe.
What do you call it?
God,
the Haney overhaul, the Haney.
Yeah.
Is that for Hank Haney or for
Right,
Sam?
yeah.
I mean, for
Haney makeover. Oh gosh. Well, Tony, I think you're moving in the right direction, and I heard you say it's amazing how hard it is to implement swing thoughts immediately on the golf course. And here I am getting crap from you over text messages over the weekend because you shot 100 after I helped you with your setup.
Well, you didn't help, obviously.
But I do think Tony's a perfect example for this because we can probably all benefit from lessons and working.
All benefit from him playing golf better.
We can all benefit.
Absolutely. At that annual member guest, I think you could benefit from him playing better as well.
He could benefit from me playing a little bit better too.
Yeah, I was gonna say at the member guest, I would benefit from Chris playing a little bit.
Yeah. It's gonna be a symbiotic thing. So I'll take lessons too. Maybe
you're gonna vicariously live through Tony's improvements and hopefully through osmosis get some of those benefits.
Without a doubt.
No, I'm taking on Chris as my student. We're doing some online work together.
I'm going to shoot 100. I'll shoot 100 next weekend.
All right.
When we were just like as we were starting up, as the previous student cleared the bay, I walked in, put my bag down, and said, "Anders, I'm here to end your career." So we'll see how it goes.
All right. On to the next thing. We talked a little bit more earlier about Ping, and just I love their philosophy, man. Like I love the company. I love the people that work there. They do it right, in my opinion. And in today's time, there's a lot of people doing things for the wrong reasons. And I think Ping for
shady as fuck.
Yeah. I think for umpteen years now, Ping has just done it right. And I have this book here for anybody that can see. And
nice small book.
Yeah.
Quick read.
Light
Quick
reading.
read.
Yeah.
It's called What's that?
What's the low price on that book?
I have no idea because they sent it to some media, which I'm grateful for because there's another book for anybody else out there that's interested in how it got started, smaller book called Karsten's Way. And anybody that's interested in that, I recommend going on, Amazon or whatever, getting it. It's a cool starter book that obviously whoever put this together, Jeffrey Ellis, I think is his name, put together. It's called And the Putter Went Ping. Just a phenomenal book that goes through the history of how Carson started the company and the amazing inventions. And it got me thinking, just, man, they really have revolutionized a lot of things. And I just don't think people understand the fact that they've done so many things. I mean, think about it. The answer putter still is the staple of every putter company.
It's still the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I mean, somebody could tell you what the percentage of answers versus all putters sold is, and it's got to be, that answer style has got to be just a massive, massive, massive percentage, which is why every company has 2 or 3 flavors of it in their lineup at least.
Yeah, so I just wanted to go around and, give some kudos to them and ask everybody we did on Twitter yesterday, just saying, what's your favorite ping invention? And there's a lot of them. So just go around the room and, see. What do you think, Sam?
I have heard the story from the guys that developed turbulators and how they came about it and all the testing that went in and all the engineering. And I think just beyond the fact of the performance benefits, I think just the whole story behind turbulators is really badass.
So what about it is most badass in your opinion?
Just the fact that they have an innovation team and the structure of their organization and how they came about. Okay, well, we think that this could help improve aerodynamics. All right, well, let's build a prototype. So they talk about how they build the prototype and how they do the testing, and then they see that it does have performance benefits. Okay, well, how do we go from prototype to be able to mass produce this on the top of a driver head? You won't really see. You'll see shaping and materials designs in crowns, multi-composite crowns and things like that. But very rarely do you see such, exacerbated, I guess.
Yeah, there's a line
there's
a line in this book that Carson said, and I wish I had it, but I can't remember all the words in this book, unfortunately.
a lot of words.
Basically, he said, I don't care how ugly this thing is as long as it works, right?
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, they've made some ugly clubs over the years, but
there's a method behind the madness.
But there's
always a method behind the madness.
It's function over form.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And when they talk about being an engineering company first, I think to me part of what's cool is that it goes back to the foundational premise of who Karsten was. And you see that lived out through different clubs. I picked the I2 wedge, the original lob wedge, because for me it was one of the clubs that, one of the very first clubs that other people put in their bag to play, even when they were on contract with other competing companies at that time. And you didn't, it really didn't make the same number of waves. At that time, people didn't care about what's in the bag and
right.
That kind of stuff, as much as they do now. But, I mean, everybody had an I2 lob wedge in the bag. And you can still trace to, today what a lot of lob wedges are and look like. Again, just like the answer putter, go back to that original I2 lob wedge. Not to mention the whole legal stuff with Phil and the groove rule and that's just kind of a interesting part of golf history too. But just the club itself, it's cool.
Yeah, for sure. Tony, what do you think?
I mean, I think the answer is probably too obvious. So I'll say, I guess one that I've been, I sort of was laughingly, I don't want to say dismissive, but sort of treated as, okay, cool. Like I said, cool, bro, no big deal, right? The hydro pearl finish and this idea that you can improve performance to some degree, right? Ping isn't trying to hit home runs with everything. Like, you can win a ball game with bunt singles, right? And that's kind of the approach. And this idea that, or sort of the acknowledgement that moisture on the club face or moisture between the club and the ball is going to fundamentally change the performance. And so if we can reduce that and improve consistency, to me, that's kind of a really, really big deal that is only just kind of right now moving to the forefront. And I think it's one of those things where you're going to start to see other companies doing more of it and talking about it more as we move forward. And like I said, I think we'll probably see some type of similar technology with a golf ball down the road. So I think in terms of, I like quiet little things that are kind of big fucking deals. And this is
the windproof head cover.
That's just a great story, right? I mean, just leaf blower testing a head cover for wind resistance. Well, yeah, all right,
My head cover's never blown away.
A perfect example of this is one little thing we can do that obviously whether your head cover blows away or not probably doesn't impact your performance unless you twist an ankle chasing it or something like that. But it's still just like this. We're going to find some tiny little detail that may be overlooked, and we're going to pay attention to it.
Hey, I think it's just when you can do better, right?
Right.
So mine, I guess, I mean, there's so many of them, but I mean, just going back to the fact that we talk about a lot of evolutionary, not revolutionary, but they revolutionized a lot of things. And one of them was custom fitting for damn sure. Mm-hmm. That color code system for lie angle really, I mean, changed the entire industry to start thinking about doing that, you know, and still to this day, while they don't really use it as much, they've evolved away from that, or on top of that, really, the industry itself has definitely started focusing more and more and more on it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Well,
there's still some places where you go and you go for a fitting, and every fitting that, you know, one of the kind of off-course shops, you know, 25 minutes away from me, every fitting you do there starts with static fitting to the ping chart. So that, I mean, that's kind of their baseline still. So, I mean, hey, obviously it's had an impact.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking of, you know, ping inventions, I can't kind of go without saying that there's an issue with one of their inventions, you know? And
somebody's invention.
Somebody's. That's the question.
There's an issue with someone's invention. If you haven't heard of golf-patents.com, David Dawsey runs the site. He's an IP guy in the golf, well, not in the golf industry, but kind of in the golf industry too. Covers something as, you know, niche as golf patents and does a really good job at it. And he uncovered a patent infringement complaint from even roll putters against ping. And it has to do with what people for years told us didn't matter and told us we were crazy. And that was putter grooves. And when
imagine that.
Weird that they're all on putters now. Anyway, the ping catch a few years ago won 2 or 3 years a row of our putter tests, and it was this putter groove tech that, you know, helped off-center putts, you know, stay on track a little bit better, and
at least maintain speed.
Yeah, right. Basically like consistent smash factor.
Consistency of speed.
Wow, I like that word.
Yeah. It definitely didn't curve, though, Phil Kenyon.
Ouch.
Oh, boy.
Anyway,
Where's that napkin?
Anyway, that being said, the putter had won for a couple years in a row. And, you know, even roll putters comes out and does the same thing in our putters. Cleveland did well with a similar groove pattern. Weird thing was, what we saw was even roll grooves were staying the same. And the ping grooves were changing every year. Like, why are you changing a groove that won every year? You know, it was really just kind of odd. And Cleveland, same way. And there were some rumblings that there was some stuff behind the scenes going on about, you know, the companies contacting each other and, you know, people infringing on this or that.
Carlsbad being Carlsbad and trickling down to Phoenix. I mean, you know, legal departments send letters back and forth all the time in the golf industry anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah, so who knows what's going to happen with the lawsuit, but all I can tell you from our point of view, we've seen one groove pattern stay the same, and we've seen all the other companies continue to change it and not really perform as well as they originally did. I don't know what ultimately is going to come of it, but you know, that is something that's in the news in regards to golf patents and ping, and so. Any thoughts on that?
Well, at the end of the day, we know, you know, in any litigious environment, somebody's going to win, and it's typically going to be the lawyers. So at least there will be one winner in there and somebody that. But, you know, I think, like Tony said, there is an element of this that's kind of a daily business type of thing where there's constantly letters and things getting tossed back and forth. But a bigger takeaway is, yeah, if grooves really didn't matter, people wouldn't sue over them. So there's the tangential conversation of, there's technology in your driver. Yeah, there's a lot of technology in putters, and this stuff does matter.
Yeah.
And if people are willing to spend tens and potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars to protect their intellectual property around those grooves, there's probably a benefit there.
Yeah.
And they know it, and other companies know it, and they're still waiting for consumers to catch up to what
risk
they already
reward
know.
wise, companies wouldn't be willing to infringe on things, and they knowingly do that sometimes if it
Didn't work.
if it didn't work, right?
Right, like it's that simple. Like, let's not overcomplicate it. You know, so that's a big takeaway for me, regardless of where things shake out and how they shake out. But
Yeah, from a golfer's perspective, what have you seen? Like, obviously, when you first came in, you putted with the Ping Redwood.
Yeah.
What have you seen difference-wise from not only our testing facility and the putter grooves that are out there now, but for you personally?
I mean, obviously, I thought there was nothing to putters when I first came to mygolfspy. I just thought, okay, cool milled putter if it feels good and it.
Scotty, dude.
Yeah, Scotty. I have a custom Scotty I had made in high school and all that. And while those feel great, I guess you don't really understand it until you see it happen in front of you. And then you get an even roll in your bag and you start winning tournaments and you're like, holy shit, this is the real deal. And now I have no doubt that there's serious performance benefits to
I watched you, like you said, go from hitting 25-foot putts and missing 1-2 feet off either side of the cup to literally burning the edges on every putt, and that's the difference, really. You know? And the better golfer you are, the less reward you get from this putter groove technology, because the less you miss it, the less benefit you're going to get.
I don't know,
from this.
dude. I shot 64 one time.
Here we go.
And I chunked the eagle putt and it still went in. So, and I had an even roll in the bag.
that's not even a humble brag. That's just straight up brag.
Tony shot that on the front 9 this week.
But what I'm saying is I had the best round of my life, and I eagled the 16th hole because the even roll grooves helped me when I literally was so nervous over this putt that I chunked it and it still went in.
Yeah, I'm a terrible putter, but
you don't know Glenn at Titleist, though. You still don't know Glenn at Titleist.
Actually, I have met Glenn at Titleist.
Yeah,
have I gotten a fitting? I've only been able to observe a fitting. I've not been fit by Glenn at Titleist.
All right, so a couple new releases. One that dovetails right into the putter talk we were talking in face tech and grooves and everything, and a new one that we're just gonna give a little bit of hints onto, but we really can't say anything until Tuesday on. One is the new Cleveland Frontline putters.
Interesting idea here.
What you got?
I mean, to be honest with you, I don't know that much, but I know the center of gravity is forward, but I thought we were supposed to go rear wide with center of gravity to increase MOI.
No MOI, man.
No
MOI.
It's
anymore.
gone.
That's
Zero.
Out. That's 2018, brother.
He gone.
She gone.
Not just that's like not even 2018. That was like
That was 2000 to 2018.
so August.
So what, rear and back?
Yeah.
Oh, man, I'll never forget, like before my golf spy, when all the new product would come out with the other business I ran in golf, every press release was basically from every company, a copy and paste version of every other one that they had come out with some. Yes, low and back tech. So, Tony, what do you think of this new Frontline putter series?
I will reserve judgment until we actually get them in and see how they perform. But just as my general rule and probably something that golfers should keep in the back of their heads as well. This is a marketing driven industry that is also sort of heavily commoditized, right? There's not a lot of difference from one product to the next, and so very often when you hear of a new technology, and again, I can't say that this is the case here, we haven't tested these, but very often new technologies aren't so much performance driven, but more differentiation driven. Like how can we do something that's different from everybody else? And sometimes different works, sometimes it doesn't. And I don't know, this just to me feels a little bit like, hey, we're doing something that's different, right? This is our way to be different in the putter category, and not necessarily a way to be better in the putter category. But hey, let's see what happens when they're tested. Anything is possible, I guess.
Well, it's just interesting to think about a putter company like Cure, for instance, where they focus on these giant blade putters with MOI and weight just pushed so far to the outside that our testers have putted them and said they can't. I don't even know what's going on with the putter when they're putting it. And then this is like the complete opposite end of the spectrum, I feel like.
Well, I think Tony put it well, like just being different to be different is one angle, right?
Yeah.
But is it actually going to benefit golfers? We'll wait and see. I mean, they're basically saying in their marketing materials that a 15-foot putt becomes as easy as a 10-foot putt. Carbite putters for anybody out there.
I putted with a carbite in middle school.
Did you?
Yeah, I bought it off of TGW.
Yeah. So for all you that remember carbite, it's been done similarly before. And what's old is new in the golf industry almost always. So wait and see. But it's called the Cleveland Frontline putters. They look pretty nice. We got them in.
Yeah, they look good.
And at the end of the day, no different than the Tommy Armour $99 putter. If it works, it works. And Cleveland has differentiated themselves in a couple ways. One, and that is this new series, and one is that they are in that value area. What do the putters usually run? 129, 149?
They're not the most expensive now, like
Yeah.
149.
Yeah, I think
It's
these are a
79.
little more expensive.
Well, it's got new tech.
Well, they've been. I mean, they had the Huntington Beach line, which was that $100 full mill putter, deep mill. Had incredible subjective feedback from our test group, and they actually performed pretty well.
I don't know why they went away from that, man. Like they should have kept trying to pound on that a little bit.
It's the D word, dog.
What?
Differentiate.
Oh, I thought you
gotta be different,
man. I was like, whoa.
I was going to go a completely different phrase there.
Y'all, get your minds out of the gutter.
All right, well, moving on to the next thing, and that is Most Wanted Utility Iron of 2019. And we just wrapped that up. And Sam, take it from there.
All right, so last week we tried to announce our winner, but unfortunately the winner was embargoed, so we couldn't announce it just on...
Test embargoed, kind of a weird, different approach. Like, obviously, everybody knew that the HMB existed. I mean, we put a story up, a month ago?
Yeah.
But no sort of hit test results, whether it's Most Wanted or the YouTube guys. Nobody was allowed to actually show real world, I hit a golf ball with it performance before yesterday. So different approach to an embargo. Hopefully that doesn't become a common thing.
So if you haven't read the Most Wanted Utility article of 2019, the winner was the Mizuno MP20 HMB. That's the
hot mother bitch.
That's actually the official name for it. No, it stands for Hot Metal Blade. It is a hollow body construction iron featuring, Mizuno's grain flow forging. They're all about it. This one does have grain. Face and hosel only, and then obviously with the multi material head, it's hollow.
I mean, it feels one of the best driving irons I've ever hit.
It was rated the best subjectively among the test group too. So
it feels as soft as a blade. If they say soft as a blade, blah blah blah, but it feels like one of those soft wedges, but the forgiveness of a hybrid kind of.
We should have known that it was going to be a good iron when Tony came down to the facility and was hitting it high, long, and straight. So he was surprised.
Exceptionally weird. Yeah, and I guess the thing that I would say about the HMB, and I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that it's true beyond just the two utility, but anybody, especially Mizuno fans, may or may not agree, but I always found that if you were going from like an MP series iron, so pick one, right? Like the MP18s, for example, that I had in my bag last year for a bit. Once you went from the MP18, the kind of the full forged construction, down to like a fly high, there was an appreciable difference in feel, and you're like, yeah, it's okay, but it doesn't feel like the rest of my set. I hit that HMB, and I'm like, oh my god, this feels like the MP20s that I've been messing around with for the last 2-3 weeks, however long I've had them. It's just this belongs in this lineup without any sort of real appreciable feel degradation, and considering that you're moving from grain flow forged HD construction in the MB and the MMC to a full hollow body design, it's actually pretty incredible that they've maintained that feel to a large degree. That was, apart from the fact that I hit it long and straight, I was just like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
good job.
Really quickly, just for everyone listening that wants to know, that hasn't read it, might not have time to today, give the rundown of who the winners were and then what you liked about each one.
So obviously Mizuno MP20 HMB is the overall winner. I like it. Tony hit on it really hard about the feel, and the performance of it is really good. But I'll say that the HMB is was one of the lower launching utility irons in our test. It was low spinning. So if you're looking for something that's a nice transition from your irons to a 2-iron, so if you play a bunch of hybrids, this probably isn't the right utility iron for you.
Well, you could go with the 3 or 4. And
and that's the other thing about the HMB is you can go all the way up to the mid irons with the HMB. You can get a whole set of HMB. Shit,
You can get a puff
You
of
go all the way to the pitching wedge with an HMB.
Well,
Yeah,
let's quick note. If you are going to the article today and you're looking at it and you're clicking on the button to take you to that product, it's going to take you to the full set right now because I don't even think the individual product's ready, which is nothing we could really do about it right now because of the timing. But you can special order it from Mizuno in an individual iron, correct?
Yes, you absolutely can. They have their own SKU for that product. So if you want the HMB, just the 2-iron, which is the one that we tested, you can absolutely get that. We'll jump over to the Ping G410 crossover, which is the longest. Not the best rated for subjective feedback. Off the center of the club face, not a lot of golfers really like this one. And actually, it's funny because our data show that this isn't, for the average raw numbers, it's not the longest. I think it's short by 2 yards, but in our StatSig, we run through the data through the statistical significance. And for the highest number of testers, this was one of their longest irons. So, if you need pure distance off the tee in a crossover iron that's not going to have a super wide sole and it comes stock with a graphite shaft, this is a really good product to consider. And then jumping over to the Titleist U510, which won Most Forgiving, which is again one of those clubs that didn't receive good praise.
Can we talk about that?
For me, that is a big surprise because it felt like shit.
Well, if you go from TMB, which was a slightly clickier version of any other Titleist iron, that a lot of people really like the feel of a TMB, and then you jump into a U500.
Well, the U500 felt clunky. It felt empty.
Yeah, mishits.
Mishits. It felt like a blade that was coming up the shaft and into my hands on a cold day.
Yeah,
it was just one of those ones where I'm disappointed.
Well, here's the interesting thing about that. People all the time, this is where I love our testing, right? We all hit it and went, wow, this is 2 things. It doesn't feel good, and it doesn't seem forgiving at all, right? And then guess what ends up being the most forgiving?
Exactly, which is mind-boggling, but we've been preaching it for a long time now.
Correct. Don't always go with how something feels, right? But go with the data.
But I was watching people do the test, and I'm like, okay, they would be like, just monitoring someone. They hit it bad, like, oh man, I hit that so bad. And you can hear it. That Titleist does not sound good when you don't hit it well. But the ball speeds were still good. I'm like, what's going on here?
Yeah, so that's the thing is, you have that factor within a golf shot and when they're playing. But when you're overshot and you say you need to pitch it 200 yards or 220 over water or whatever, and that's the club you need to hit. Do you have...
That means fly it in the air, right?
Yes.
Okay. Pitch it means fly in the air. Okay.
Shut up. But do you have confidence looking down and knowing that you're going to hit a good shot?
Yeah, just for the record, the U510, which won Most Forgiving, is the larger of the 2. So they have the U500 and the U510. Yeah. The 510 is a little bit wider of a sole, longer blade, bigger profile.
Yeah. So that's one of the biggest things is, do you feel confident of hitting this golf shot with this club in your hand? And I think that's a 25% of it when you look down when you're over that shot is giving you self-confidence, in my opinion.
I think Adam disagrees.
Oh yeah, he does.
I mean, we just found out that's not true.
Yeah.
No, but
you didn't feel confident over it, and guess what? It was still your most forgiving.
The human element does play a factor.
Must have had a very supple grip.
I think there's some validity to what Harry's saying. I'm a little bit more...
I want to play a club that I like to look at,
right?
But it doesn't really come to find out impact the data,
right. Well, in any sense, if you're looking for
Ryder doesn't agree.
U510, if you're looking for a very forgiving utility iron, the Titleist U510 is a fantastic option. It's brand new from Titleist, and they've got 2 out there, both really good. Jumping down to best value, you've got the Tour Edge HL4, which is a new offering from Tour Edge. They just came out with the HL4 line this year. Subtle differences to what they had in the HL3 line, still good nonetheless. The HL4 is really cool, kind of like the HMB line from Mizuno. You can get a full set of HL4 ironwood. They're called the ironwood utilities. So you can go all the way up to 2 iron, which I think they come in at 17 degrees.
Anybody remember in the back of Golf Digest, like the advertisements in the very back that couldn't really afford like the quarter page or whatever? Like the little ones in the back, the classifieds. Do you remember the Wedge
Always the most fun.
Yes. Do you remember the Wedgewood ones, like where it was the full set of wedges that turned into, woods? It was the Wedge.
Me and Sam have no clue what you're going on.
Yeah, I'm
right
like,
now.
okay.
You're showing your age now.
I might. Yeah, that's probably true.
Either way, the HL4 is really cool. It's super affordable. This is the company that has really put themselves in that value brand, and with Exotics EXS, they call it pound for pound performance. So these guys, they make good product, and if you're looking to save a buck, don't let the HL4 slip out of your hands.
There you go. All right. Well, other than that, we've got the Hurricane, like we said. Right
Harry,
now,
how was hurricane testing?
Wet.
you look dry.
I had most wanted rain gear on too.
I saw Sam come up in the Galway Bay today.
Mm-hmm.
Damn right.
Can't beat that.
I know.
That will cross.
So what are you finding in the umbrella testing that's interesting? Anything? Because I know umbrellas are really interesting to the listener. So what can we tell them?
I mean, there's a couple of differentiators between obviously umbrella to umbrella. Some actually don't keep you dry, which is an interesting
Wait, what?
concept.
A small flaw.
Yeah, so some materials that you see in the umbrella, you can see through the umbrella. Obviously, it's not the plastic see-through, the actual, transparent. But it's one of those materials where you can see trees in the background if you look through it, and therefore, when tested, the rain actually comes through them. So,
can I ask you a question?
Mm-hmm.
Are those good for anything?
Image maybe.
Hey, yeah, like if they're UV protected, and you want to be like Michael Jackson, you could like keep yourself out of the sun.
You could do that. You go
A little parasol.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see that a lot of major manufacturers are actually sourcing their umbrellas from a smaller company, and this is not uncommon, but it's still interesting.
It makes sense, right? Like if you're a big golf company, a moderate-sized golf company, why are you going to devote R&D resources to an umbrella?
Well, let me ask you a question about that. Why make an umbrella then?
Because you have a tour staff that is going to be seen on TV in wet conditions.
But why sell it? Why sell an umbrella then?
Because you already had to make a few for your tour guys. Why not? I mean, you have.
Yeah, and I
we know
would
there are guys.
No,
that do
because
R&D
if there's a few, if you're making a few, you're making like say 50. They're not making 50.
Well,
they're
no,
making
but
like
again,
6, 7.
Production runs don't work like
100.
that to begin with, and so and additionally, you do have loyal fans, right? Loyal brand fans, guys who want to be Callaway everything or Titleist everything or TaylorMade everything. So if you can sell them an umbrella along with a new driver and a set of clubs, why the hell not? So especially if you can sell them a good umbrella.
I mean, this year Titleist have made
just
theirs
call them out, huh?
out of Shed Rain. I mean, Shed Rain's a great company, so you are going to get a good umbrella if you go down the Titleist
Hey, well,
route.
if you're gonna outsource to somebody, Shed Rain's a good umbrella to outsource.
For sure.
Damn right.
It's one of those ones that you know you're going to get a good product.
I still love the mybrella, but they don't make them.
Shit, man, I don't even.
I
blame
tested
Titleist for doing
that thing, and you have like half a coverage. Because obviously it's designed to go.
You turn it the other way, and it covers you more.
Are we talking about speakers right now? You're gonna keep turning this shit. Like,
We
just
need,
not go down that
we need
way.
omnidirectional protection here.
Yeah, like shit.
Have we talked about umbrellas enough yet?
Harry has not.
No, I have not. But Tony, we can go back to you and your on the USGA because I don't think you got your shit out for that.
You want to go back and talk about driver testing, Tony?
I just think one of the interesting things about manufacturers, especially the big boys, like it's pretty. I mean, we were admittedly a little surprised to see when you pulled out the Shed Rain and you had that open. Unfortunately, inside, which I do not like that you open umbrellas inside. But you had the umbrellas open inside, and then you opened the Titleist one.
He's stitious.
And it was the same freaking umbrella. And I sat there, I was like, these companies have these big innovation teams to push the limits of technology and figure out how to get us more ball speed on a driver. But it's a simple,
Well, so you think it's simple.
But for them to outsource their product to Shed Rain, it's like, well, why not?
Well, I'm going to come up with every single soft goods category and make it myself.
I think we're getting ready to get a deep tip right now.
We are?
I don't know. It sounded like it. Do you have a deep tip for people?
If you're going to make a good product, make sure you do it yourself.
Okay, that wasn't very deep, but
Yes, it wasn't. I wasn't prepared.
cut that, Matt. Cut that. Edit that out.
No, keep that in.
I wasn't prepared for this deep tips segment today.
Oh man. All right. Next up, we posed the question on Twitter for anybody to ask us a question, any golf gear related questions, and we'll take Wendell Laughin. What do you guys think the percentage of golfers is who actually get fit for the right equipment? I did studies on this years ago. It's been a long time, but the number was actually like 99% plus of golfers that had not been fit properly for every club in their bag. So that means less than 1% of golfers had been fit for every club in their bag.
Well, even PGA pros, some of them don't even get fit from head to toe.
Yeah.
Right, even putter, like including putter.
One of the most amazing stats I ever saw, I think, came from Ping, and that was the fact that 85% of PGA Tour pros had not been fit for a putter. Those are the people that are telling you what putter you should be playing, you know? So, yeah, so that's one. 99% plus of people from
Hopefully
what I remember.
that number has dropped since fitting
I
options
think
have come out.
it probably isn't much lower than that. I think if you look at individual segments of the bag, right? So I think we hopefully, I wouldn't be shocked if we learned that we'd cross the 50% threshold with drivers, right? More than 50% of golfers very likely get some form, and I'm sure the manufacturers could, you're going to have a little bit different data from each one, but I think we're probably above 50% for drivers. Irons, almost everybody has some degree of fitting because most golf shops don't stock a ton of sets, so even if it's just getting fit for lie angle or something like that, there's probably a very high percentage of iron fitting. Once you go into the hybrid category, ask any manufacturer, it's next to nothing. I know that the Vokey guys are trying to figure out, why wedge fitting is so rare. So, individual categories, if you want to talk to somebody find somebody who's been fit for all 14 clubs in the bag, yeah, it's it's probably 1%.
All right, on to the next question, and it's a pretty good one. From Not Mark Podbury.
So probably Mark Podbury.
Probably not Mark Podbury.
So it's not him.
Not him.
Okay.
This one is for Tony. What do you think about the woeful tolerances in clubs sent out by manufacturers?
Like, how much more do you want to pay? I mean, these are realities, right? And you have stated tolerance. Yeah, perfect world, everybody would be right on the number. Very often they're not right on the number, especially if you're buying off the rack. Generally, when you buy something custom, whether it's a custom shaft or, obviously, hopefully if you're ordering a custom loft, it comes in at the right loft. But yeah, the reality is like every single piece of a golf club has a tolerance, right? So you have, or multiple tolerances even. So shafts are going to have weight tolerances, and heads have weight and lie and loft tolerance, and grips have tolerances. So, I mean, yeah, you can get something 100% on spec. It is possible to do that, but every bit of tolerance, every tightening costs money, right? Because there's time and effort involved.
Put it this way, we've measured a lot of companies, years ago. Remember when we did pretty much every company, everybody had tolerance issues. It wasn't anyone, no one was perfect, So there are tolerances, that word exists because there are tolerances, when in the manufacturing process, right? So like Tony said, what do you want to pay? Tighter tolerances cost more. Believe it or not, the costs aren't that much more from club to club, but it all adds up, right? And like Tony said,
100,000 times any amount of money is a lot of money.
Well, and I think one of the interesting things too is that, like, I was just walking through Mizuno's manufacturing plant, and Jeff was walking me through. He's like, "Yeah, here's our loft lie machines. This is where every club in the set goes through, and they check everything." And he was like, sometimes we'll get a situation where we'll do a custom build, and the guy will say, "Well, you didn't do my lofts right." Well, then, okay, send them back. We'll check them on our machine. The lofts are what you ask them to be. It's the machine that you use. So the different calibrations could be different. It's just like the CT situation where you're using one machine to test CT and you're using another.
Well, we have two loft and lie machines in our facility, and they're not exactly the same.
Right.
And they're two of the premier loft and lie machines in the industry.
Yeah, so, it's all relative, I guess, if that means anything.
Yeah. The next one is from Tom Higgins. How come there are no more 2-woods? Tom, no one buys them, so they stop selling them.
Oh, no.
Thanks, Tom.
It's
People love
what
the
do you
one.
want to call it, right? So I carry a 13.5 degree 3-wood. Some people would call that a 2-wood. PSG, for example, I don't know if it's 13 or 13.5, but they call it a 2-wood.
Well,
so,
let me just put it this way. People like the big
You want
dog, not
Wofford,
the small
you want
dog. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, they didn't say let's the small dog eat, did they? It's the big dog.
but if you want
Yeah,
a 2-wood, I'm sure you can find something like Tony said, Tom, that is basically a 2-wood, just not named a 2-wood
it's
anymore.
a strong 3-wood.
Just get yourself a T-less.
Yeah,
You just
no joke,
paint.
right?
You just paint the number 2 on. I mean,
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on to the last thing, and that is something that we think is pretty cool. It took a while to put together, but I think it's worthwhile for somebody out there, and that's the Titleist contest that we just announced. So for everyone out there that hasn't seen it,
It is amazing.
you can't win or heard about it.
I entered for it. I don't know if I'll win.
Yeah, I
put my
definitely entered
email
for
in
it
there.
too. I'm at 5
So
or
wait,
6 times.
are you saying? Yeah, go ahead. Never mind. Go ahead.
So one of the mygolfspy readers, or one of the people that subscribe to our YouTube channel, is going to win an all-expense paid trip. That means hotel, airfare, car, and a Get Fit Like a Pro service from Titleist TPI. So you're going to get all the woods, all the irons, all the wedges, and the experience kind of a lifetime. The one that Tony got.
We can't promise you this, but it's possible that whoever wins will actually get to go see Glenn.
He may be there.
Oh man. So anyway, go on to our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/mygolfspy, and you have to be subscribed for a chance to win. And that is probably one of the coolest contests we've had since I think I found Tony Covey with the biggest golf forum contest ever. Isn't that how we discovered each other?
I think so. That was, oh my God.
10 years ago.
Sorry, Adam, but I feel sorry for you.
He came for the free shit, and he's still here 10 years later.
You still got
I
the
think
free shit.
I want to say it was like MP53s, maybe.
Ooh, that was a good set of irons.
Why
57s?
Why Mizuno going down in numbers?
Mizuno does what Mizuno wants.
Yeah, right. Now they're down to MP20s.
They were
I don't want to
MP18
throw
last
any
year.
other.
though.
Yeah, this is
I'm not
making-
going to throw anybody under the bus, but there are people at Mizuno who don't fully understand their.
What is your favorite name of a Mizuno club, Tony?
I don't know.
The
Hot
donkey
metal bitch.
shovel, man.
Oh yes. Well, yeah, but that was Japan only. The donkey shovel, which and all the talking of the donkey shovel, we forget that the donkey shovel was actually released right next to the big sneeze. So I believe one was a lob wedge and one was a sand wedge, and these are
Can we get
actual legitimate catalog. We have the catalog somewhere. Images. These were real Mizuno product names.
I had
Big
to.
Sneeze,
That was a
donkey
lot of
shovel.
work to get those images. Remember?
Yeah, no, we had to call a guy in Japan, or
Yeah.
at least send him an email.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, that's No Putts Given, episode 14. Harry, good luck with the hurricane testing.
Thank you.
Everybody have a good weekend. Harry bought a house, by the way, so congratulations.
I appreciate it.
His
Can't
fiancée.
afford it, but dustbin is going to be my next house.
What is?
A dustbin.
So
But
anyway,
Sam's not going to be here next week. He's going to go to France, La France there, with a croissant with Chris.
yep, we're traveling to France.
So it might just be us three tomorrow. Next week. Next Friday, yeah.
Well, I'm gonna Skype in from the Alps
We could do that.
On a bike.
Shut up.
on a bike in the Alps.
Maybe next week.
Me and Chris will selfie Skype.
There you go.
Man.
Until next week, we'll see you then. We out.
Bye.